millionaire believed to be in a coma hears his wife say, "Pull the plug," but a tiny sign, noticed by a nurse, turns his entire fate around. The room was very cold. A constant hum filled the air, mixed with the rhythmic sound of machines he couldn't identify. The smell was alcohol, strong, and the air felt heavier than normal. Victor tried to open his eyes, but it was as if the world were covered by a veil. His face felt frozen, his whole body numb, as if he were trapped inside himself. The first thing that came was pain, a sharp sting in his chest, as if someone were squeezing his heart with their hands. Then an annoying tingling in his legs. He wanted to scream, to call out to someone, but his throat only let out a weak breath, almost nothing. Panic came slowly, like a shadow creeping across the floor. He was conscious. He was there, but he couldn't move. Not a word, not a finger, nothing. Little by little, his memory tried to return. Victor, yes. He was Victor. He remembered his house, his office, the movement of employees at gas stations, the smell of gasoline, the noise of the pumps, customers coming and going. He was a busy, respected man. Many admired him, others envied him. But there, at that moment, it all seemed as distant as an old dream. The silence in the room was what hurt the most. There was a loneliness that hurt more than the physical pain. No one there to hold his hand. No familiar voice telling him that everything was going to be all right. Just the beeping on the monitors and the muffled sound of footsteps coming and going without ever staying by his side. Someone, he thought, trying with all his might to make his body respond, but there was no response. His head was heavy, his eyes fixed on the white ceiling and the cold. A cold that came from within, as if his soul were also freezing. He didn't know why he was there, what had happened. He only knew that he was trapped and alone, and that somehow life as he knew it had stopped. An internal whisper began to grow, a kind of silent despair. "Please, can anyone hear me?" But there was no response. In that forced immobility, time seemed not to exist. The seconds were like hours, and all Victor wanted was a warm hand, a kind word, a sign that he was still part of the living world. But for now, all he had was the sound of his own heart, beating slowly, trapped inside a body that refused to obey. Time seemed to stand still until suddenly something changed. A different noise, a soft shuffling of shoes on the waxed floor, low, distant voices. But one of them made Victor's heart race, even though his body was still motionless. He knew that voice. He knew every tone, every pause. It was the voice of Victoria, his wife. Inside, he trembled. He tried to turn his face, open his eyes, anything, but nothing happened. Only the thought running free, screaming inside. She was there, after so much silence, so much emptiness. She had come. A strange warmth filled his chest, a mixture of relief and fear. Victoria entered with slow steps, as if she didn't want to attract attention. She seemed to be talking on the phone, her voice muffled but firm. Victor concentrated with all his might, closed his eyes completely, and kept his breathing very light, trying to appear disconnected, inert, just another body. "Yes, I'm here," she said in a tone he didn't recognize. Cold, almost emotionless. "No, not yet, but it will be quick. I think we just have to sign, and that's it." Victor felt a knot in his stomach. She didn't speak affectionately. She didn't ask about him. Not even a "my love." Nothing. Victoria walked around the room as if measuring the space. He could hear her heels tapping slowly on the floor. "I already spoke to the lawyer. The rest is just a matter of time. The papers are ready. All that's left is the final authorization from the doctors." A pause. "Yes, everything will be ours. He's not really here anymore. He's just taking up space, a dead weight in this bed." The words fell like stones inside him. Victor's head seemed to spin. This was not the woman he had loved. That wasn't the Victoria he remembered, with whom he had shared so many plans. What was going on? He stood there still, pretending he wasn't listening, but hearing every word, as if they were needles piercing his heart. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Victor heard the sound of a chair being dragged. She sat down next to him. Her breathing was calm, almost indifferent. She sighed. "If you only knew how tiring all this was. Her voice came out with a tone of exhaustion. "Now it's going to end, and I'm going to get on with the life I deserve." Victor, motionless, felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and surprise. Tears began to form, but he tried hard not to let them fall. He needed to understand more. He needed to hear everything, but above all, he needed to pretend, because now he knew. Something very bad was happening, and he was trapped inside his own body, listening to everything, alone and unable to do anything. Her voice filled the room again, this time colder, more distant. Victor listened carefully, trapped in that unresponsive body, his heart beating too fast for someone in a coma. She got up again. He could hear her walking around the room. The thin heel clicked on the floor, as if each step she took drove deeper, a pain he couldn't even explain. "You don't understand," she said impatiently. "His signature is on everything. I just need the report confirming that there's no turning back. It's not ready yet. I can't transfer anything to you for now." She stopped near the window. Birds could be heard singing. "Of course I already spoke to the lawyer. I just told you that. You're not listening to me. I have the papers. All that's left is to go through the hospital paperwork, and that's it. The rest is just a matter of time." The man's voice couldn't be heard on the other end of the line, but she answered as if she already had everything under control. "I'm tired of this. Years of my life waiting for this man to die, and now look at him, just a body." She laughed dryly, without any humor. "Now he's just a nuisance. When this is over, everything will be ours. The whole empire, all the stations. You'll see. You're going to be a millionaire." Victor felt as if the world had shifted. Nuisance. That word echoed cruelly in his head. He wondered how she could say that, how she could look at him, even though he was unconscious, and say that he was just a burden. She didn't cry. She didn't hold his hand. She didn't talk about missing him. Just business, ambition, coldness. "I've put up with enough. Now it's my turn to enjoy myself," she said, almost in a whisper. The silence after that was heavier than any words. Victoria hung up the phone and stood there for a few seconds looking at him. Victor was screaming inside, but on the outside, nothing, not even a blink. To her, he was just a motionless body, an obstacle, and that was like dying a little inside. His heart hurt more than any wound on his body. It was the kind of pain that doesn't bleed, but crushes you little by little, as if squeezing your soul. He didn't want to believe what he heard. He didn't want to accept that this voice, so familiar, so close, was now spewing venom. That this woman with whom he had shared his life, with whom he had dreamed of growing old, now only saw value in what she could get out of him, in what she could inherit. Victor tried to open his eyes, not just to wake up, to scream, but to try to escape, even if only for a second. But the pain was still there. He wanted to scream. He wanted to get up, shake Victoria by the shoulders, ask her why, but nothing moved. Not his mouth, not his hands, nothing. It was in that painful silence that he made a decision. He was going to pretend. Pretend. Victor took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. He remembered the time when they started out together, when they had nothing, when he sold gas through sheer effort, and she helped with the accounts. That whole story seemed like true love. "All right," he said, half laughing, half giving in. "But are you sure about that? Total, absolute control." Victoria squeezed his hands. "Yes, because I'm the person who loves you most in this world. I would never do anything that wasn't for your own good." Those words were etched in his memory, as if they were written in fire. He signed without fear, without mistrust. He signed because he loved, because he trusted. And now there, lying down, trapped, hurt, he understood the magnitude of his mistake. That was not an act of love. It was a plan, a calculated move. The memories of her smile as he signed the paper now burned like acid in his chest. He trusted. He gave everything, thinking he had time, that he had life, that he had love. But at that moment, trapped in a body that would not obey him, all that remained was the pain of betrayal, and a question that hurt more than any other. When did she stop loving him, or did she never love him? Time passed slowly, as if the world outside were in slow motion. Victor, trapped in that bed, tried to organize his thoughts, piece together his own memory. How he had gotten there, what had happened to him, an accident, an illness. Nothing made sense yet. It was like being in the middle of a never-ending nightmare, with no explanation, no way out. The only certainty was his body, the weight of his own body. Everything felt disconnected. He thought about moving his arm, but nothing happened. He thought about opening his mouth, screaming, saying he was alive, that he was there, but only silence responded. That's when he noticed the sound of the machines next to the bed. They seemed to monitor every beat of his heart, every breath, but there was something strange. None of those machines reacted when he tried to make an effort, not even when he was desperate inside. His heartbeat remained regular, as if he were asleep, as if everything were calm, under control. "But I'm here. I'm thinking," he screamed silently in mute despair. "I'm hearing everything. Why don't those things show that?" That's when he understood. No one knew. No one had any idea that he was conscious. Apparently his vital signs were there, but the most important thing, his consciousness, his real presence, didn't show up anywhere. It was as if they had turned him off, as if he were just a body breathing out of habit. The feeling was suffocating, as if they were burying him alive, little by little. Victor wanted to pound on the bed, kick the sheet, cry for help, but all he could do was feel his own heart beating loudly and his chest rising and falling, as if each breath were a struggle. The worst part wasn't the pain or the fear. It was the feeling of helplessness of screaming in a room full of people and no one hearing him. Inside, he was crying. He was crying with a pain that no one could see, a pain hidden behind his still eyes, his motionless muscles, his closed mouth, and deep down, one question kept running through his mind. If no one knows I'm here, how am I going to get out of this? The loneliness at that moment was a prison without bars. Later, when the daylight was already fading from the window, Victor had heard the door open again. The sound of heels was her, Victoria, that presence that used to calm him, now squeezing his chest. He no longer expected affection, but even so, each visit from her was a new blow. She didn't speak to him. She walked straight to the corner of the room and took her cell phone out of her bag. She began to speak softly, as if she didn't want to be heard. But Victor, even with his eyes closed, had his ears more alert than ever. "I can't take it anymore," she said impatiently. "This is taking too long. Those stupid doctors don't understand. I'm going to talk to the director in a little while." Silence on the other end of the line, and then the phrase that cut like a knife. "You know I love you. I want to be with you. I just need to get this sorted out first." Victor felt a strange weight in his stomach, nausea, a knot. This wasn't just business talk. It wasn't just ambition. It was betrayal. Really, she wasn't alone in this. There was someone else. "As soon as all this is over, we'll go on a trip, disappear for a while, start a new life on our own, just the two of us." She laughed softly. "He won't even know. I mean, he doesn't know anything anymore, does he?" Her words were pure poison. Every syllable burned inside him. Victor wanted to believe it was a lie, that it was crazy, but the tone of her voice left no doubt. It was real. She had someone else. She had a plan. She was in a hurry to get him out of the way. And there he was, unable to move, unable to react, unable to ask why, his head spinning as he searched for an explanation. How could she think that? How could she be so cold to someone who gave her everything? I gave her my trust, my life, my dreams, my arms. She was everything to me. He remembered the birthdays, the lazy Sundays, the plans, the days when he looked at her and felt proud to have chosen this woman to walk beside him. Now she didn't even care if he heard her or not. It was as if he were already gone. And worst of all, she didn't cry or hesitate. She was just following the plan. The pain of betrayal burned like a high fever. Victor didn't know what hurt more, whether it was his body that wouldn't respond, or his heart that now knew too much. Time in the room seemed to pass very slowly. The movement in the hallways slowed down. Victor was alone again, or almost alone. The door opened slowly. He recognized the perfume before he heard the footsteps. Victoria again. She came in talking softly on the phone, but loud enough for him to hear her. "Yes, everything is ready," she said in a dull voice. "I spoke to the director today. He explained the procedure to me. He just needs my authorization to do the tests. They say that if he doesn't feel anything, that he's no longer conscious, that he's not coming back, then we can do it." Victor's heart began to race. His eyes filled with tears again, but he held them back. He had to listen until the end. He had to know exactly what she was doing. I told him that I don't want to prolong the suffering, that it's better to let him rest in peace, even if the tests show something. She paused. The doctor said that within a few minutes of disconnecting, it would all be over. No, no, no. That's what was going through Victor's head. Despair, panic. His breathing quickened. Even if only a little, he wanted to move, get up, do something. But his body still didn't respond. And she was planning his end. "She wants to kill me," he thought, his chest tightening. "She's going to disconnect me, and no one will know I'm here." Urgency overwhelmed him. He wanted to move a finger, an eyelid. He wanted to scream, cry, ask for help, but all he could do was think, and listen. Victoria hung up the phone and stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she approached the bed. He felt her presence nearby, but he heard no words, only silence, a cold, calculated silence. And then she left, as if it were just another day. Victor was left there alone again, but now with a new fear, a real fear that was measured in days, perhaps hours. He felt that time was running out. "I need to react. I need to show that I'm here, that I'm alive, that I want to live. Please, God, help me." But how? How to escape from a body that doesn't obey? How to ask for help with still eyes and a silent mouth? Despair was cruel. It was like drowning in a sea of silence. It was about the faces that trusted him, the hands that squeezed his in gratitude, the voices that said, "Thank you, boss, for believing in me." Victor cried inside, not for the material losses, but for everything he had built with so much love and that was now at risk in the wrong hands. And even though he couldn't move a muscle, he swore to himself that if he came back, if he had a chance, he would do everything for them, for the family he had built, not with blood, but with respect and humanity. Amidst the memories came a face, a name, Carmen. It came like a warm breath in the midst of the cold. The memory was not from today, it was from years ago. He met her on a rainy afternoon when she arrived at the central gas station with a wet resume in her hands and eyes full of fear. She was young, thin, exhausted, her hair tied back haphazardly, and an expression that mixed shame and desperation. "Sir, I'll do anything. I just need a job. I have 4 children. I have no one." He remembered her trembling voice. He remembered how she tried to hide her tears, but couldn't. He also remembered the moment he knew deep in his heart that she wasn't just another person. She was special. At that moment, he didn't even ask for references. He just said, "Carmen, you start tomorrow. I trust you." That sentence changed her life, and the gratitude she showed day after day was never forgotten. Carmen wasn't one to slack off. She arrived early, did everything carefully, was attentive to customers, respectful to her colleagues, and never asked for anything, even in the worst of times. But Victor noticed. He noticed when she arrived with a tired face, her eyes sunken from spending the night awake caring for her children. Once he called her into his office and asked, "Everything okay at home?" She hesitated, looked down, and replied in a low voice, "More or less. We're out of gas, but I'll figure something out." The next day, he sent a new tank, a basket full of food, and toys for her children. He never said anything, never asked for thanks. He just left everything at her doorstep. She cried herself to sleep the next day and said, "I will never forget what you did for me. Never." Now, trapped in that bed, Victor remembered all of that, how hard she worked, how grateful she was, how she always said, "You saved my family. If I ever get the chance, I will repay you." The memory of Carmen hurt, and at the same time gave him comfort. It hurt because he knew that if everything went wrong, people like them would be the first to suffer. But it gave him comfort because there, in the midst of so much betrayal and lies, there was someone who knew the best of him, someone who carried a piece of his kindness alive in her heart. Carmen was more than an employee. She was a reflection of what he believed in. She was proof that his life had made a difference in someone else's life. And there, in that cold room, Victor made another silent promise. If he managed to return, he would do everything for her, for Carmen, and for all those who trusted him when he could still smile, talk, and reach out his hand. The days passed slowly. In the silence of that hospital room, Victor remained motionless, a prisoner of himself, while inside he fought a battle that no one could see. Thoughts swirled like a whirlwind, vivid memories, promises made in the darkness of pain. He resisted. Every second was a test of strength. It was on one of those days, on a quiet morning, when Elian entered that room for the first time with something different in her eyes. A nurse with steady hands and a caring heart, she was one of those people who don't just do their job out of obligation. She observed, felt, noticed what others didn't see. Victor couldn't explain it, but he felt that something changed in the atmosphere when she arrived. It was as if her presence brought a little warmth, even though the room was so cold. She approached the bed quietly, checked the equipment, carefully adjusted the sheet, then paused. She looked at his face a few seconds longer than usual. "Mr. Victor," she said softly, as if speaking to someone who could hear her. "If you are in there, know that you are safe. I'm here." Yes. At that moment, something stirred inside him, a different kind of warmth. It was the first time in days that someone had spoken to him as if he were still truly alive, not just breathing there. Elian stood still for a few more seconds, and then came the first sign. Small, almost invisible, but she saw it. His breathing seemed to change rhythm for a second. It was very slight, but she noticed it. She murmured. "Maybe I'm seeing things." She moved closer, looked closely, and spoke again. "If you understand what I'm saying, try to show me. Blink. Do something. Anything. Nothing. At least nothing she could be sure of. But there was something in the air. A tension. A presence." Elian left the room thoughtfully. Something stirred inside her. Throughout her shift, she returned several times, observing, speaking softly, asking questions, waiting. That night, when writing her reports, she noted something different. The patient shows subtle signs of consciousness. I suggest special attention and continuous observation. She didn't talk to anyone, only to trusted doctors. But inside, she already knew. That man was not as far away as he seemed. And Victor, although he couldn't express it, felt it. For the first time in a long time, someone noticed that he existed, and that, even if it was only a little, lit a small flame that had almost gone out in his chest. It was on a quiet afternoon, one of those when time seems to stand still, that Elian entered the room with a strong feeling in her chest. For days, she had been paying more attention to Victor than protocol required. But that day, there was something different in the air, a tension, as if the room wanted to say something. She approached the bed, as always, slowly, calmly, respecting his silence. She straightened the sheets, checked the equipment, and then gently touched his arm. That's when she noticed it. A slight, almost invisible twitch in his finger made him frown. Could it be? She touched him again, a little more firmly, and again there was a small movement so discreet that anyone else would have ignored it. But Elian was not just anyone. Not only did she see it, she felt it. Her heart began to beat fast, but at the same time she remained steady. She took a deep breath, moved closer, and spoke in a calm voice. "Victor, if you're in there, try to move again. I'm here. Yes. And yes, I saw you. The other day I thought I was crazy, but now I'm sure I saw you." She waited a few seconds, and then another sign, a slight tremor at the corner of his lips. Minimal, almost nothing, but for her it was everything. Elian held back her excitement. She couldn't get carried away. No, she still had to be sure, to observe more. But deep down, she already knew. That man wasn't lost. He was trying to come back. And now she was certain. She wrote everything down, but didn't record it in the main system. She kept the notes in her notebook. It wasn't carelessness. It was instinct, because something inside her said, "It's not time to tell anyone. Not yet." And above all, it wasn't time to tell Victoria. Elian had already crossed paths with Victoria a few times. She sensed her demeanor, the empty gaze, the haste, the coldness, and more than once she heard strange things in the hallways. things that didn't fit with the attitude of a concerned wife. There alone in the room with Victor, Elian spoke softly, as if telling a secret. I'm not going to tell her. When the monitor showed a change, a slightly faster heartbeat when she spoke, a different breath when she told something exciting, she wrote everything down and smiled. I know him better than many people who just come in here to sign papers. You are strong, and I believe that with all my heart. Sometimes she would remain silent, sit next to the bed, hold his hand, and just be there, because she knew that even if there were no words, sometimes just being there is the best medicine. And so the days went by. Elian became more than a nurse. She was company. She was an anchor. She was the only bridge between Victor's closed world and the hope of one day living again. Elian's words weren't just sounds. They were comfort. They were medicine. They were everything Victor had. It was strange. Before, Victor tried to move his body out of desperation, but now he did it for her, because he wanted her to know that she was right to believe in him, because he didn't want to disappoint the only person who still saw life in him. And that's how he started trying, for real. With all the strength he could muster, he concentrated on moving his fingers. First the ones on his right hand, then the ones on his left. Small spasms. Nothing easily noticeable, but he knew that each one was a victory. At night, when Elian was gone, he remembered her words and repeated them in his mind. I believe in you, Victor. And that phrase became strength. He tried to move his feet, to stretch his fingers. He felt a burning in his muscles, a resistance that hurt, but now it was different. It hurt, and that was good, because feeling pain meant he was alive. A tear fell down the side of his face one morning. It was from exhaustion, but also from gratitude. For the first time since it all began, he felt real hope. Not because his body was better, but because someone out there made him want to come back. Come back with everything. Come back to being himself. Come back to the world. And deep down in his chest, he thought, if she believes, then I can believe too. It was little, but it was everything. At the end of a hot morning, the door to the room opened with more force than usual. Elan, who was changing the sheets on Victor's bed, turned around quickly. Victoria rushed in, her heels clicking firmly on the floor, and her stern face full of impatience. I need to talk to the doctor urgently, she said, without even looking at Victor, as if he were part of the furniture. Elian resisted the urge to respond immediately. She took a deep breath, calmly finished what she was doing, and only then approached. Do you want to talk to Dr. Ramirez? I can call him, but something happened. Victoria crossed her arms and looked Elian straight in the eye, making no attempt to hide her contempt. What happened is that this is already taking too long. There's been no improvement. I want to know what's needed to authorize the removal of the machines. We need to close this cycle. I'm tired of this. Elian felt a knot in her stomach, but she didn't back down. In a firm voice, without shouting, she replied, I understand your concern, but Victor is showing small reactions. Yes, but real ones. He responds to stimuli. Victoria laughed mockingly, not hiding her impatience. Reactions? What kind of reactions? He's talking. He's walking. Not yet, Elian said calmly, but his consciousness is present. He reacts to touch, to my voice. I notice the changes in his vital signs. It's not mental, it's physical, and also clinical. Victoria shook her head in annoyance. That doesn't change the fact that he's no longer truly alive. This, she pointed to the machines, is not life. It's just keeping a body alive, and I'm not going to wait forever. Elian took a step forward. He looked at her firmly, but with respect, with all due respect. What's happening in here isn't something everyone can see, but I see it. I feel it. Victor is fighting. He's trying to come back. He hears, he feels, and more than that, he wants to live. Victoria turned her face away, annoyed, not knowing what to say. It took away her control. That's not your decision, nurse, she said harshly. I know it's not, Elian replied calmly. But it's my responsibility to take care of him. And as long as there's a sign of hope, I'm going to defend that right. His life matters, and he deserves this time. The silence in the room became heavy. For a few seconds, only the sound of the machines could be heard. Victoria turned and left without saying another word. Her quick footsteps disappeared down the hall. Eliane stood there still, her heart pounding. Then she turned to Victor and said softly, her eyes filled with tears, "We did it, Victor. A little more time. Now it's your turn. And I know you're going to keep fighting, because I'm never going to leave your side." The days continued with a quiet but lively routine. Inside that cold room, there was something that no one else could see. A connection was growing, even without words. Eliane continued to arrive early and leave late. She cared for Victor with a tenderness that only someone who truly feels can give. And it was in the conversations she brought up, without expecting answers, that he got to know who this woman with a firm voice and soft hands was. "You know, Victor, I almost became a doctor. I was," she said one day, as she carefully changed the bandages. "I was in my 3rd year of college. It was my dream. Ever since I was a little girl, I said I was going to wear a white coat." She let out a short, somewhat nostalgic laugh. "But life takes so many turns, doesn't it? My dad got sick. My mom couldn't handle everything anymore. We had almost nothing left. So I left everything behind. I took the first job I found at the hospital and never went back." Victor listened to every word as if they were letters being opened. He discovered a little more about her every day, and that brought color to moments that had previously been gray. "I never regretted it, you know," she said one afternoon as she adjusted the blanket, "because caring for others, even without a diploma, is still medicine. Medicine for the soul, maybe." She spoke simply, but with a sparkle that Victor could feel even with his eyes closed. It was as if each of her sentences sewed up a little piece of what was broken inside him. Another day, while massaging his hands with oil, she told him, "I have 3 younger brothers. I practically raised them as their mother. My mother had health problems and my father left forever. So, you know, caring became my way of loving. I think that's why I can't leave him here without hope." Victor's heart tightened with each story, not with pain, but with respect and admiration. It was like finding a diamond in the rough, a woman who could have taken another path, but chose to be there in silence with a stranger that everyone had already given up on. And he thought, day after day, how can someone who has lost so much still be able to give so much? Ian was light in a place where no one else lit anything. And with each story of hers, each detail of the difficult life she had faced with courage and sweetness, Victor had one more reason to keep fighting, because now he was no longer fighting just for himself, he was also fighting for her. The weeks passed slowly, almost standing still, but inside that room, something was changing. It wasn't something everyone could see, but Eliane saw it, felt it, and Victor felt it even more. The first time he really moved was something simple. A finger. The index finger of his right hand moved a little, almost nothing, but it was enough to make his heart beat faster. It was as if, after days trapped in darkness, a sliver of light had opened up. Eliane was writing something down when she saw it. She stopped, came closer, and spoke softly. "Victor, you moved that finger all by yourself." He tried again, putting all his strength, every bit of energy into it, and with great difficulty, he moved it again. It was very little, but Victoria appeared without warning, her face serious and her gaze impatient. She went straight to the medical area as if she had already made up her mind. She didn't ask about Victor, nor did she want to know any details. She wanted a decision. She wanted an end. "I've waited too long. My lawyer is suing this hospital," she said to Dr. Ramirez in a firm, almost cold voice. "The situation has been the same for weeks. There's no point in continuing with this care. He's not coming back. You're just prolonging something that has no return. That's emotional distress." The doctor took a deep breath, looked at Eliane, who was standing to one side, and then looked at Victoria. "Mrs. Victoria, with all due respect, that's not true. Victor is showing signs of progress. They're small, I admit, but they're real. You may not notice it, but we do." Victoria crossed her arms in annoyance. "Signs again. What? A little finger that moves? That's not living, doctor. That's having a machine turned on. I'm his wife. I have the right to decide, and my decision is to end this. He needs to be buried now." Eliane felt her blood boil, but she stood her ground. He took a step forward, looked Victoria straight in the eye, and spoke clearly. Victor squeezed my hand deliberately. "Do you hear me? He responds to stimuli. He's fighting. What he needs now is not to be abandoned. It's time, that's all. More time. Victoria laughed mockingly. Oh, sure. And now you decide. A nurse on duty, wanting to play doctor. Get real, poor Tona. Dr. Ramirez, who was always reserved, intervened firmly. Elia is not alone in this. I also see progress, and as long as there is a chance of recovery, the medical decision will be to preserve life. The protocol is clear, and the final decision in this case is made by the medical board, not you alone. You can file all the lawsuits you want. A life is a life. Victoria was silent for a few seconds. Her face hardened. She understood that she wasn't going to get what she wanted so easily, and left the room without looking back. When she left, Elian took a deep breath. His heart was still racing. Dr. Ramirez put his hand on his shoulder and said, "You did the right thing. He has someone who believes in him, and sometimes that's what saves them." Elian returned to the room shortly after, sat down next to Victor, took his hand, and spoke to him. She tried, but she couldn't. "We've gained more time, Victor. Now it's up to us. One day at a time. I'm here. I've always been here." And in that silence that only they understood, he responded with a slight movement of his fingers. Small, but full of strength. It was on a quiet morning, with cloudy skies outside, that something different happened. Elian had just entered the room as she did every day, with the same care as always. She carried a notebook in her hands, where she wrote down Victor's small advances, even the most discreet ones. She spoke to him as if she were talking to a lifelong friend. "Did you sleep well, Victor? Today the weather is a bit ugly outside, but here inside we remain steadfast, right?" She began her routine, adjusting the blanket, checking his vital signs, until when she touched his hand, she felt something different. It wasn't a reflex. It was a slight, controlled pressure. She looked at him directly, her eyes wide open. "Do you want to show me something?" Victor, with an effort that seemed to come from the depths of his soul, moved his hand slowly, trembling. Elian held it tightly, saying nothing else, waiting until he made a gesture with his eyes, a direct, intense look. She understood, ran to the table, grabbed a board, a sheet of paper, and a pen. She returned and placed everything as accessible as possible. "Look, here it is. Let's try." Calmly. "I'm here." She placed the pen between his fingers and held his hand. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The silence was heavy, full of tension. But then he began. The pen moved slowly across the paper, writing crooked, uncertain letters. Elian held back her emotion with clenched teeth, not blinking, so as not to miss a single movement. First an A, then what looked like a J, then a U. The pace was slow but clear, letter by letter. When the word was complete, Elian read it aloud in a trembling voice. "Help!" She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filled with tears. It was the first time he had really spoken to her, not with his body, but with his soul. She squeezed his hand tightly, knelt beside the bed, and responded from the heart. "I'm here, Victor. I'm going to help you. I promise. You're not alone anymore." And in that room, in that simple moment, an alliance was born that was stronger than any contract, any device, any despair. A word written with effort and pain that rekindled hope. With the support of Dr. Ramirez, Elian prepared a careful plan to transfer Victor to a rehabilitation clinic without Victoria knowing. The transfer was done discreetly, ensuring that Victor received the care necessary for his recovery. At the new clinic, Victor began an intense process of physical therapy. Every small movement was a victory, and Elian continued to visit him frequently, providing emotional and physical support. He talked to him, encouraging him to keep going, even in the most difficult moments. Victor, motivated by Elian's constant presence, devoted himself eagerly to the rehabilitation sessions. Every day, he felt stronger, more confident in his ability to recover. The relationship between the two grew stronger, based on trust and mutual respect. The atmosphere at the clinic was warm, and the medical team was committed to Victor's progress. Over time, he began to learn more complex movements, and his ability to communicate gradually improved. And Elian celebrated every advance, no matter how small, with joy and affection. Victor's road to recovery was difficult, but he was not alone. With Elian's steadfast support and the dedication of the clinic team, he continued to move forward, determined to rebuild his life. Victoria found out about the transfer a few days later. When she learned that Victor was no longer in the hospital and that no one had told her anything, she felt the ground shift beneath her for a moment. Her usual calm gave way to nervousness that she tried to control. Her plan was slipping through her fingers. She went straight to the bank. She tried to access the accounts, checked reports, and spoke to lawyers. She wanted to freeze everything, to stop any movement of money that might be made in Victor's name. She spoke with contained anger. "I am the legal wife. I want to freeze the funds immediately. Nothing happens without my permission." But the response was curt and direct. "Mrs. Victoria, there was a recent change in the documents. Temporary control of the funds is protected by a legal medical measure based on Dr. Ramirez's report." She didn't understand right away and remained silent, staring at the phone. Then she called the doctor's office demanding an explanation. "What do you mean you authorized that?" she asked, her voice already raised. On the other end of the line, with the calmness of someone who knows what they are doing, Dr. Ramirez replied, "Victor is under special care. And yes, I signed the necessary measures. There are clear signs of consciousness, and I, as the person responsible for the case, activated the safeguards to protect him. But I am his wife. I should have been informed. Ma'am, with all due respect, our priority is the patient's well-being, and at this time, his recovery requires distance from any situation that could affect the process." Victoria hung up furiously, but inside, fear was already beginning to grow. The control she thought she had was slipping away. The doors were closing one by one, and worst of all, no one seemed to believe her anymore. Meanwhile, elsewhere, far from all that cold, Victor was moving forward, each time with a new movement, a foot, a leg, an arm, protected, still silent, but free from those who never wanted what was best for him. And deep after a few seconds, his voice finally came out firm, though with a lot of emotion. "What are you doing, Victoria? What are those papers?" Victoria tried to get up quickly, throwing the pieces of paper aside. "It's nothing, just old documents that are no longer useful. I was cleaning up." Victor shook his head in disbelief. "Don't lie to me. I already heard your conversations. I know what you tried to do. And now, seeing you destroy those documents, it's clear that you're still trying to hide something." Victoria took a step back, trying to remain calm. "Victor, you're not well. All this recovery has you confused. I just want to help you." "You want to help?" Victor interrupted her in a louder voice. "This is how you help. Trying to disconnect the machines, telling the doctors I was hopeless, and now destroying documents from the business that took me a lifetime to build. Don't treat me like a fool, Victoria." She opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't say anything. Victor continued with tears in his eyes, but a firm voice. "I trusted you, Victoria. I gave you everything I had, and while I was trapped in that room, all you could think about was how to take advantage. Isn't that right, Victor?" She finally replied in a desperate voice. "I was just trying to save what was left. You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Enough," Victor interrupted, raising his hand to silence her. "I heard everything, every word, every plan. You betrayed me in every way possible. There's no excuse for what you did." Victoria tried to approach him, but Victor took a step back, using his crutches to keep his distance. "I worked my whole life to build a legacy, to secure our future. And you only thought about destroying everything, even the trust I had in you." She began to cry, but her tears did not move him. "Victor, forgive me. I was wrong. I know I was. But I was afraid. I thought I was going to lose you, and I didn't know what to do." "You didn't know what to do," Victor said with a bitter laugh. "So you decided to bury me before I was dead. And you even had the nerve to share your plans with another man." Victoria remained silent, unable to defend herself. Victor took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything he was saying. He looked at the torn papers on the floor, and then at Victoria, who was now cowering in a corner of the studio. "It's over, Victoria. You are no longer part of my life, and you will never touch what is mine again. I will make sure you have no access to anything I have built. From now on, you are on your own." He turned around, his crutches tapping firmly on the floor as he left the studio. Victoria tried to call him one more time, but he didn't look back. Victor knew he had closed that chapter of his life, and although it hurt, he felt that he was finally in control again. When he reached the exit door, he found Eliane waiting for him. She looked at him with concern, but also with pride. "Are you okay?" she asked, taking his arm to help him steady himself. Victor took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, finally. Everything's fine." Victoria stood in the middle of the study, surrounded by torn papers, destroyed documents, and the faint smoke still coming from the extinguished fireplace. When Victor walked through the gate, she ran after him, stumbling over her own feet, her voice trembling. "Victor, wait. Please, listen to me." He stopped without turning around. He stood there with his back to her, breathing deeply. She approached him, her voice tearful, trying to pick up the pieces of what was left of her image. "I was wrong. I lost myself. I was afraid. I thought I was going to lose you forever. I'm not that person, Victor. No, really." He turned slowly, his eyes steady, his face tired, but telling the truth. "You weren't wrong, Victoria. You chose from the beginning. You saw me there, not moving, and you decided it was easier to end it all. And it wasn't just that. You lied. You betrayed me. You played dirty, coldly." She was crying now, unable to hide it. Her hands were shaking, her face wet. "Forgive me, please. Can we fix everything? I loved you. I swear I loved you." Victor looked her in the eyes for a long time, and then spoke in a firm, low, hurt voice. "I trusted you, and you destroyed everything. There's no going back." Silence. All that could be heard was her quiet sobbing. He took a step to the side and pointed to the street. "On second thought, you're the one who should leave. Go now. This is no longer your home, and I am no longer your husband." She tried to approach him again, but he turned away and went straight to the central study of the house. He picked up the phone and made a few quick, direct calls. Cancel all her cards, block access to the accounts and positions, and notify all employees. She no longer has any right to anything of mine. On the other end of the line, the response was quick. Everything would be done immediately. Victoria, standing in the hallway, watched everything in disbelief. This man was not the same man she once thought she could manipulate. He had returned, and he had returned completely. Without raising his voice, Victor walked to the door and opened it. "You already took everything you could. Now take what's left of you, because I still want peace. Peace." She walked past him in silence, without a last plea, only with the clumsy steps of someone who knew she had lost. Not a house, but a man she once trusted with her eyes closed, and now saw everything clearly. Victor closed the door slowly, took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, felt the weight lift from his shoulders. Eliane waited a moment, and then left too, wanting to leave him alone in that difficult moment. The sun was high in the sky when Victor stopped in front of the central station. That place was more than concrete. Bombs and oil. It was part of his life. Every brick, every screw, every tree planted with his own hands. That was where he felt alive. And now, after all, he was back. He was dressed simply, without a suit, without looking like the owner, just a man, returning home. He walked slowly, his steps still a little slow, but steady. The sound of his boots hitting the floor caught the attention of the first employees. One of them, Jose, opened his eyes wide. Don Victor, Carmen, who was cleaning the store counter, looked up and stopped. The rag fell from her hand. "My God," she said, running toward him with tears in her eyes. "You're back." Victor smiled. It was a calm smile, full of truth. He hugged Carmen tightly. He didn't need to say anything. The hug spoke for him. Soon other employees appeared. It was a mixture of celebration and emotion, hugs, tears, handshakes. Everyone there knew what he had faced, and everyone had somehow felt his absence, as if he were a father. After a while, he asked for silence, and everyone stopped to listen. "I'm back, but this time with a more attentive heart. Many things have changed, and I saw with my own eyes who stayed when everything fell apart." He looked at Carmen, who now had tears in her eyes, but her chest held firm. "Carmen, come here." She approached him, a little shy. "You never turned your back on me, even when I wasn't here. You were always loyal. You always took care of this as if it were your own. I saw it. And more than that, I felt it. He took an envelope out of his pocket and handed it to her. Here you are. What was already yours by merit is now official. You are the new general manager of our network of stations. Carmen put her hand to her mouth. She was shaking, crying, unable to speak. But Victor, you, she said firmly, because I trust you, and because gratitude is also shown through actions. The whole yard applauded. It was a simple but enormous moment. It wasn't just a promotion, it was justice. It was recognition. And there, on that floor stained with oil and hope, Victor felt that he was rebuilding more than just a business. He was rebuilding a family. Over time, Victor's routine, and now it was slowly blossoming, like a flower that grows even after the harshest winter. Victor was in no hurry. He knew that after all, what really matters is what remains when everything else disappears. And Eliane, she was staying. She was the now, and maybe also the tomorrow. Victor sat in the leather chair in the old office, now renovated with simple, soft touches. The open window let in the smell of the courtyard, of the pumps running, of life returning to its place. And there, with a coffee in his hands, and his body still recovering, he looked out the window and thought. Life had turned completely upside down. He lost many things. His confidence in what seemed solid, the ground beneath his feet, the days when he thought he was in control. But in the midst of all that, something unexpected happened, something he would never have imagined. Eliane. She was the turning point, the first hand extended when everyone else just wanted to disconnect him. The first voice that spoke to him, as if he were still alive. It was she who saw light, when even he thought everything was just darkness. He remembered in detail the first time she took his hand, the first time she said, "I believe in you." That ignited something inside him, a spark that turned into a fire, a courage he didn't even know he still had. Now, looking at everything they rebuilt together, he understood. It wasn't just medical care, it was more. It was soul, it was dedication, it was love, perhaps even though they hadn't said it yet. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't wait for applause. She just stayed, and kept staying day after day, word by word, silence by silence. While everyone else was looking for what they could get out of him, Eliane came to give, and that's why she was the difference. Victor knew he could have stayed there in that hospital room, forgotten, disconnected, but she didn't allow it. It was she who said one more day. It was she who said, "I'm here." And now he was there, alive, present, whole, and all because of her. A tear rolled down his cheek without him realizing it. He took the handkerchief and wiped his eyes slowly, shamelessly. Eliane entered the office shortly after, smiling as always. "I brought 2 coffees, one in each hand. I thought you might want a hot one," she said, simple as always. He took the cup, looked her in the eyes, and replied in a low voice, but one full of truth. "More than that, I just want you to always be close." She said nothing, just smiled, but within that smile, he knew there was everything he needed, and a little more. The idea came on a quiet afternoon, as Victor and Eliane walked between the gas pumps at the central station. The sky was clear, and the wind was blowing gently, as if even the weather was calmer since he had returned. He paused for a moment, looked around, and said quietly, almost as if talking to himself, "I think it's time to open another station." Eliane looked at him in surprise. "Another one?" "Yes, a different one. A place that's not just for selling gas, but for remembering what really matters." She was silent for a moment, and then smiled. That smile that always came before something beautiful happened. "A place with soul, right?" Victor nodded. "Exactly. I want it to be named after the people who saved me, the ones who stayed when I couldn't even lift my gaze. I want every brick to remind us that hope can also be built. And you," he looked at her fondly, "you're going to help me with that." And she did help. The two of them threw themselves into the project with the same care as someone building a house to live in for the rest of their lives. Victor was in charge of the structural part of the location suppliers. Eliane focused on the details, such as what the employee space would look like, the break area, and the mural of thanks with photos and names. Carmen also participated, She suggested that they set up a small community library where customers could donate and borrow books. Victor loved the idea. The new branch was born as a symbol. The name was simple and direct: Esperanza, hope. At the opening, Victor wanted to speak, not with a prepared speech, but from the heart. This place is not mine. It belongs to those who believed in me when no one else did. To those who saw life where everyone else saw only the end. There will be gasoline here, yes, but the most important thing will be humanity. The applause was sincere, emotional. Many there cried. Elian stood by his side the whole time, holding his hand, saying nothing. But there was no need to say anything. And there, amid laughter, hugs, and the smell of gasoline in the air, Victor felt that he was finally starting over. Truly, Victoria walked the streets with short steps and a lost look in her eyes. The life that had once revolved around expensive scenes, designer clothes, and pretentious trips was now pure silence and emptiness. The money was gone, the friends were gone, but what hurt the most was not having control. The world she thought she ruled had slipped through her fingers. She tried everything. She called Victor's old acquaintances. She sent messages with prepared apologies, a sweet voice, a repentant tone. I was wrong. I was confused. But I still love Victor. He is the love of my life. But no one believed her. Those who heard her voice pretended there was interference. Those who read her messages did not reply. And the few who did respond were clear. Victoria, everyone knows what you did. It's no use trying to manipulate people anymore. She tried to approach Carmen as if to ask for forgiveness, but Carmen wouldn't even let her into the stall. Not here. Here we work with the truth, she said firmly without shouting. Victoria persisted for a few more days. She showed up near Victor's house, sent flowers, handwritten letters. She tried to touch the past with pretty words, but nothing changed. Victor didn't respond, not out of spite, but for peace. He had already understood that silence is the best wall against those who only cause wounds. And the others, those who had previously applauded her, now didn't even look at her twice. Victoria began to walk through a city that no longer recognized her. Her name, which had previously opened doors, now made people turn their faces away. And there, alone, at the end of another cold afternoon, she sat on a park bench and cried. Not because of lost love, but because for the first time she understood that she had never known how to give true love. And those who do not know how to give one day learn in the worst way that they will no longer receive. It was late afternoon when Victor called Elian to go for a walk. They walked slowly, aimlessly, around the new stall. The orange sky was reflected in the windows of the newly painted store. At first he didn't say much, just walked with his hands in his pockets like someone who has been carrying something in his heart for a long time and still can't find the moment to say it. Elian, as always, respected the silence. He didn't press him, didn't ask questions, just kept walking as he always did. They stopped next to a tree that Carmen had planted with her children a few days earlier, a small IP tree, still small, but with strong roots. "Do you know what I thought when I saw you planting that tree?" he asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "What?" she replied softly. "That you only plant when you believe you will see it grow, that it is worth the wait." Elian smiled, not understanding where he was going with this. Victor took a deep breath, took a small velvet box out of his pocket, opened it slowly, revealed, "I'm not good with pretty words, but I couldn't stay silent today." She looked at Victor with eyes full of truth. "This man gave me a hand when no one else wanted to see me. He believed in me when I was tired of trying. I came here broken, with 4 children and no future, and he gave me one. He gave me dignity. He gave me respect. He gave me work. He gave me life." Elian cried silently with his hand on his chest, and it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people here. Everyone here has a story that involves him, and seeing him now, standing happily, marrying this incredible woman, Elian, is like seeing life doing justice before our eyes. She smiled, moved. "You changed my life and my children's lives too. Today they have food, school, a future, because you didn't give up on me and Elian. She saved you. and together you are an example of what true love is, the kind that begins with care and grows with faith." The applause was loud, eyes filled with tears. Victor stood up, hugged Carmen tightly, said nothing, just cried. And in that hug was everything. Gratitude, history, the promise to continue being the man who cares, who lifts up, who loves. As the months passed, the gas stations began to experience a new era. But this time, the fuel that powered everything there was much more than gasoline. It was trust. It was gratitude. It was the strength of a story that touched every person who stopped to fill up. Carmen took charge with a confidence that no one doubted. She knew the name of every worker. She listened to ideas and took care of the details. She worked with respect, with the same care that a father has for his home. And the team followed suit, because she didn't command, she inspired. Eliane, now Victor's wife, shared the daily routine with him. She was there to support, but also to create. She thought of improvements, took notes, helped with the community services they had created. Food delivery, workshops for young people, health campaigns. The gas station was no longer just a business. It was a meeting place, a place for people. And the customers, the customers came from far away. Many didn't even need gas. They came to learn the story, to see with their own eyes the place where a man defeated death with the help of a woman with a pure soul, where a worker became a manager on merit and not by luck. "This isn't just a gas station," said a woman who always stopped by. "There's something here that you don't see anywhere else, right?" The local newspapers started to talk about it. Television did a small report. Social media was filled with photos, videos, and comments full of emotion, with people saying they felt part of it, that they left there believing more in life. And Victor watched everything with a calm, peaceful gaze. He knew that the mistakes of the past hurt, but he also knew that every right decision was now bearing fruit. From the office, he looked out at the crowded courtyard and thought, this isn't just selling, it's living. And when you live with truth, life always rewards you. Victor enjoyed walking early before the station started to get busy. The silence of the morning gave him a calm he had never felt when he was younger. He walked slowly between the cars, still turned off, the uniforms hanging, the smell of coffee beginning to fill the air. In those moments, he thought about everything he had experienced, about how life had suddenly turned upside down from being a man in charge of an entire body, trapped in a bed, without a voice, without movement. Then came the betrayal, the strongest pain, the deepest wound. But there, with his eyes wide open, he understood something he hadn't seen before. Life is more about the people you choose to have around you, because in the end, it's not things, titles, or contracts that keep us going. It is the eyes that look at you with truth, the hands that hold you without asking for anything in return, the silences that embrace, the hugs that do not demand. He thought of Eliane, he thought of Carmen, of her children, of the employees who called him boss, with respect and affection. He thought about every face that stayed, and as strange as it was, he also thought about Victoria. She had been painful, but she had also been a revelation, because it was with her that he saw for the first time how much he was surrounded by lies. And it was thanks to her that he found the courage to break away from what was not real. It was in that betrayal that life broke apart, and then began to mend itself in the right way. If it weren't for her, I might never have stopped to see what really matters, he murmured, looking up at the sky. What had once been only a shadow was now a lesson. And standing there, his heart at peace, Victor smiled to himself. He knew he had lost many things, but what he had gained afterwards was worth more, because now he chose differently. He chose with his heart and true love, the kind that comes from listening carefully, from time that was worth everything. Living with Eliane transformed Victor inside. She had that gift of planting a silent seed and letting the other person realize in time that it could grow. One night, sitting in the backyard, she told him about a mother she met at the hospital, a woman who slept on the concrete bench in the reception area while her son underwent tests, with nowhere to stay and nothing to eat. Sometimes we focus so much on saving big things that we forget that saving a life starts with the most basic things, she said, looking up at the sky. A plate of food, a roof, an opportunity. Victor remained silent, listening, feeling. That same week, he gathered the administrative team and spoke with the calmness of someone who knows what he is doing. We are going to start a new phase at the stations. We are going to create a program to help those in need. Food, support, work. We are going to give back what life has given us. Carmen was moved and was the first to support the idea, and they started together. They set up an area at the back of the new station with showers, hot food, and help for homeless people. They created scholarships for the children of employees. Elan coordinated everything with calm, heart, and attention. We can't change the whole world, she said, but we can change someone's world, and that's enough. Soon donations, support, volunteers, and people who had previously just passed by, without seeing anything, stopped, looked, and helped. Customers brought clothes, food, and smiles. The station became a refuge, a place of hope. Victor, increasingly involved, visited the families they were helping, learned their stories, sat down to listen, and saw himself in each story, because he knew what it was like to need someone's help when all seems lost. Elian had ignited something in him that even he didn't know he had. And now, seeing so many people being touched, made everything meaningful. This here, he said, looking around, is what matters. This is what I want to leave behind. And there, amid sincere smiles and outstretched hands, he understood that the greatest station he could build was the one that filled the soul. Victoria now lived in a small room on a nondescript street in the city. She was no longer the woman who wore high heels, expensive makeup, and designer bags. The mirror showed something else: sunken eyes, hair tied back any old way, and a silence that weighed more than her own body. She spent her days looking at social media, reading the news about the Hope Station, about Victor's social work, about Elian by his side, the photos of the smiles of the children being cared for, of the grateful employees. Each of those images was a thorn in her side. She clicked, read, closed. Then she opened it again, as if she wanted to hurt herself on purpose. One of those afternoons she decided to go there, not to go in, just to look. At first they arrived shy, a little nervous, but after a few encounters they began to run towards him when they saw him, shouting, "Grandpa Victor!" And he laughed. He laughed like someone who had found a missing piece of himself. They made a small garden in the back of the new branch. Victor taught them how to plant, how to prune, how to care for the plants, and he spoke to them with affection and patience. He told stories of when he himself used to fill the tanks of cars. The children listened with wide eyes. And then the customer arrived and asked, "Put in only 5 pesos. I'm short on cash," he said with a laugh. 5. Today, it's not even enough for a piece of gum. Everyone laughed together, even though they didn't quite understand. The laughter came more from how he told it than from the story itself. He talked to the oldest about school. "You have a good head on your shoulders. Use it. Learn. You'll go far. But never forget to be good, to help, to listen." It was like passing on everything he himself had learned through pain. At Sunday meals, Carmen and Elian prepared everything with love. Everyone sat down at the table. The food was simple, but plentiful. And there, between bites and stories, Victor looked around and thought, "I didn't lose everything. I got back what really matters." Because in the end, it wasn't about how many positions he held or how much money he saved. It was about sitting on the floor with a child on his lap, teaching, being remembered not for having a lot, but for being present. And there, with little arms around him and his heart at peace, he felt that now he was truly at peace. The sun was slowly setting on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and gold. It was late afternoon at Esperanza Station, but it felt more like a little piece of eternity. Victor walked slowly, unhurried, his hand intertwined with Elian's. The two walked side by side, in silence, like people who no longer need to speak to understand each other. All around them, there was laughter. Carmen's children ran around the courtyard, competing to see who was faster. Employees chatted, sitting on the freshly painted benches. Some customers who had already become friends waved from afar. It was a simple place, but full of life. Victor looked at Elian and squeezed his hand gently. She turned her face and smiled with that smile that always calmed him down inside. "Can you believe everything we've been through?" he asked in a low voice, as if he didn't want to break the beauty of the moment. She nodded, looking ahead. "We fell very low, but we got back up together." Victor took a deep breath, not like someone carrying a heavy load, but like someone who finally feels light. It had all started with pain, betrayal, silence and despair. But now it was love. It was peace. It was true forgiveness. The rebuilding of something that was no longer in a hurry to prove anything to anyone. Life had taken many turns and there they were, hands together, walking side by side, looking calm. And that was the message he wanted to leave for anyone who knew their story. No matter how hard the fall, what matters is who takes your hand to help you up. Redemption. Yes, it is possible to start over. And love, true love, waits, finds, heals. There, surrounded by cheerful voices, the smell of food in the air, and the warmth of a sunset that seemed tailor-made, Victor and Elian continued walking. And what came next was just another chapter in a story that now knew where to find happiness, in simple things and in the right hearts. It was night at the station, but the place was brighter than ever. The highlights illuminated every corner of the courtyard, reflecting off the arriving cars, the laughing faces, the children running with their hair blowing in the wind. The cafeteria was full, the tables occupied by families, friends, people who came not only to fill up on gas, but to be there, because there was something there, even if it couldn't be explained. Victor was leaning against one of the columns with a hot cup of coffee in his hands. He watched everything in silence.